could stay like this, forever following you.
Good morning and welcome to SEN Stream. This morning we get some final messages from the module leaders. We have a final look at Kiot. We take a Q&A session with me on advanced performance nutrition. And we take some questions and provide answers in the chat. Guys, stay tuned for the final edition of SEN Stream. Guys, good morning and welcome to what will be the final episode of SEN Stream for this academic year. Episode 24, 12 episodes from semester 1, 12 episodes from semester 2. And it's been a journey, my goodness. Yeah, it's been a long one. And I'm super proud of what we've all done on SEN Stream over the time. I believe everyone has enjoyed tuning in, seeing SEN Stream, seeing it work, and it's great to see people are joining us this morning for the final episode. So a few hellos to make this morning. Hopefully more folk will join in. If you are watching and you haven't said hello in the chat, please do so right now so I can say hello. So good morning to Vicky. I'm not sure where you're joining us from this morning, Vicky. whether you're in the lab, at home, at work, whatever. But nice to see you in the chat. Rebecca, good morning. Great to see you in the chat as well. I can see that 5 people are watching, so 3 people are being a bit shy. We've got Antonia here this morning. Good morning. It's great to see you. Everyone's sticking an exclamation mark on the end of it as well, which is always great to see. So, what are we going to cover today? So we have some sign-off messages from module leaders, which is nice to see. Just kind of rounding off some of the updates on the modules. Obviously, you don't have any teaching sessions next week. So maybe some nice parting messages from the module leaders across the board this morning, which will be great to see. We're going to have a little final touch on the transition that you guys are going to make towards finishing off your outstanding assignments, moving towards the exams period, and also alongside all of this, keeping your projects going as well. So we're going to have a little look at that as to what you could be doing right now, what you should be working on moving ahead into the summer period. And we're also going to take the opportunity to have a bit of a Q&A session on advanced performance nutrition. I've moved it towards the end. Just in case, we've got any part-time year 2 students who are not necessarily hugely interested in that. But do stay tuned if you've got questions to ask in the chat with regards to that assessment. I'm more than happy to try and provide a little bit of clarity if it is needed. So before we move into the final module sign-off, just got Alex coming in there with 3 exclamation marks nonetheless. Just saying good morning. So again, guys, just if you've got any questions, any follow-up points that you need, do line them up in the chat ready so I can address them as we move forward. So without further ado, I am going to move into the module updates. Goodness. Okay, we're going to kick off with advanced performance nutrition. So we've had, we did the consolidation session last week where we took the opportunity to move through some of the sessions that we covered over the module. One task that I've just seen there as a polite reminder. Now, Magdalena asked me very kindly if I could put up a submission link, as I know a few of you have managed to work and get that assessment done sooner rather than later. I will make sure that that is done this afternoon, so you guys have got an opportunity to submit that work from this point onwards. I apologise. It was an oversight before I came on live this morning. But yes, there will be a submission link available for you guys as of today, so you can submit work if you're well on the ball with that. Again, I mentioned in the session that there'll be some questions trickled out over the next few weeks, just leading up towards the exam. I think for 2 reasons. One, it'll give you an opportunity to have a little bit more insight as to the types of questions you're going to get presented with, and give you an opportunity to practice writing some short answer questions or answers and dealing with some of the case studies. So, and it will also act as a polite reminder that you do need to do a bit of preparation for this thing. And when I say do a little bit, I mean you do need to prepare for this exam. If there's any, Vicky, part-time year 2 student sat this exam last year. Any words of advice? Please let the guys know in the chat as to what you think, what you did for the preparation, your reflections. That would be super good. If there's any other part-time year 2 students who sat the exam last year who can pass on any words of wisdom, please do pass that on in the chat. That would be excellent. I've now received all of the student module evaluation forms, which I need to submit to 101, which is the building down the road. It'll take about 12 days for those to get turned around, so then I will post the SME report up on Blackboard so you guys can see what your peers thought and what the overall sort of feeling was on the module. And I suppose the last thing to say is just to take a final opportunity to just say thank you very much for being such an engaging group this year. And again, I look forward to watching your video assessments when they come in and seeing what kind of novel approaches that you've taken to some of the scenarios that you've been presented with your peer videos. So I am looking forward to that. Do make sure you keep tricking away on that in the background, and that should be fantastic. Just a few points to note in the chat here. Let me just move over. You can see, well, first of all, Maddie, good morning. Maddie's not my friend because I couldn't spell her name correctly, and I am apologetic to the end. It's because I usually refer to you as Maddie, and my apologies. But good morning, Maddie. Great to see you in the chat. Alex is pleading with Vicky here to share some wisdom. So if you are able to do that, Vicky, just to give some words of encouragement, advice, and guidance, I'm sure that would go down well with some of your peers in the chat. Let's head back over, though, to the module updates, just to keep things ticking over. We're going to move it on to, I believe, nutritional assessment. Yeah, my apologies. Now, I'm just going to move, because I forgot to open up the... I'm letting the last edition of the SEN stream down this morning, but Claire has given us some nice, kind words. Let me just get that open so I can read that out for you now. He sent across some nice messages with regards to the module. So let me just open that up and we can touch on that now. So she has said the following. Feedback for concepts. Obviously, Claire is the module leader for concepts and principles. She has finally posted some responses to the SME on that module site. So if you did want to see what your peers thought and what the general consensus was on concepts, head across there. And you can also see some of the reflections that Claire has made with regards to the feedback that she's received on the module. So if you're interested in finding out more and see what the sort of thoughts were, head across there, had a little look, and then go from there. Again, Claire has been quite keen to sort of just say that, we're not all going to fall off a cliff as we move into outwards of semester and into the research projects. And again, is very kindly offering her statistics support for any projects. And she's indicated here that she is keen to let you guys know she's happy to help. She has emphasized here that it could be useful to have this in a group setting. So if your study design is similar to some of your peers, if you approached Claire and said, well, actually, we've all got a fairly similar research study design, that we'd all appreciate a little bit of support on this particular thing, that would be great. And also a SEN stream exclusive. Whilst it's the last episode, so the episodes reflect the weeks of semester. We will do a special edition of SEN stream later on, probably in early to mid-June is what I would say before I disappear. To ensure that you guys have got a special edition of SEN stream to look at statistical analysis. So again, it will be a Q&A type session. You can approach that session with questions that are specific to your projects in mind, and everyone can benefit from the answers, which will be super helpful. So do look out for that. Whilst it is the last episode of SEN stream, it's certainly not the last edition of it, if you like. So, the final sign-off message Claire has left you with here is that for nutritional assessment, it has been a pleasure, with an exclamation mark at the end of that sentence. And she's looking forward to reading your portfolios over the coming days and weeks. I know Claire is currently sat at home looking through those as we speak. So if you are watching, Claire, hello. I hope it's all going well and you are enjoying the assessments you have sat in front of you. I've just seen here in the corner of my eye, we've got some chat from Vicky here. She says here, obviously revision is number one priority. Practice writing short and longer essay answers. It's useful for the exam, and it's actually good revision strategy. Helps identify any gaps in the knowledge that you have. And Alex coming in there saying, thanks, Vicky. I've seen, there's a name that's popped up here that I don't recognise. Francisca Freya, good morning. Well, good morning. Do let us know where you're from. I'm not sure if you're a GPHN student, but welcome. And we'll go from there. But welcome to the stream. Everyone, please do say hello. Let's head back over to the module updates. Okay, we've got assessment, health and fitness. Again, Jane has come in with some final parting messages for you guys. I'm just going to read that out now. We can see here, good work on your critical presentations. Oh, sorry. Why are these? I don't understand why these slides are not updated. I did this before I came on air today. Sorry, my apologies, guys. Let me just sort this out because I've definitely put this in. My apologies, guys. I'm just doing a bit of a rubbish job this morning. Here we go. There we go. Assessment, health and fitness. I've enjoyed working with you all and getting to know you over the past 2 semesters. Looking forward to some interesting projects in the summer, exclamation mark. Good luck with your research and coursework, and your coursework will be marked as soon as possible with a smiley face to finish it all off. So hopefully, again, I know assessment, health and fitness is a popular module. I hope you all got a chance to feedback some of your thoughts on the module through the SME forums. I look forward to reading them as course leader as well, just to see how we can continue to develop that. And then we can go from there. Some clarification points with regards to the names. It's Anna. Thank you for clarifying that point. I think that the name was just throwing me there a bit. Probably use of a personal Gmail account. And my apologies, Anna. Welcome to the chat. Please do get involved. I've just seen Claire pop her head up in the chat as well. I did kind of want this session to be a little bit more sort of engaging hands-on with folk. Let's just see what Claire has to say here. So she said here, morning all, decided to have a wee break and check in with you all, exclamation mark. Having just marked all the reference lists, finishing the marking of Communicating Science podcasts, and then back to the portfolios. Claire being heroic as ever with remarking and such like. So great to see you in the chat, Claire. Hopefully we can provide a little bit of respite as you move through the marking that you have. I'm going to move back over to the just the module sign-offs, really, just to make sure that you guys kind of capture what the module leaders have thought and some reflections they've had and things. So just to say from Teddy here, my big head is in the way as always, but it was nice meeting you all and teaching you, and best wishes with your dissertation project and career from this point onwards. Teddy has also offered his assistance and help with regards to stats. He's indicated there that he's happy to help. And just a reminder, if I just sort of shuffle to the side here, just remember to use Teddy's staff email, not an R at my dot, it's at westminster.ac.uk. It will be the email listed on the university website for Teddy. If you do want to speak to him, just get a little bit of final advice or a little bit of a refresher on stats, please do make use of that if your supervisor is unable to advise you. So, great to see, and hopefully that's kind of brings a nice little round off for the modules that you guys have sat over this second semester. It's again, we appreciate it's a tough one doing an MSc, particularly in a year. It is challenging. So hopefully you guys have learnt a lot. You're still cracking on with your assignments, and you feel like you've had a successful semester. So let's move it on though. We're going to take it over to Kiot, keeping you on track. I've been quite active in the labs, just kind of cruising over there, seeing what's going on, working quite closely with Helen to make sure that the laboratory spaces are ready and prepared for undertaking a number of projects moving forward. I have to say the equipment list that you guys supplied was invaluable in order to kind of appreciate the demands on the laboratory spaces. And it was one of the primary things that allowed us to prepare the labs in the way that we have done. So you will see that the labs have changed shape. There's lots of different things going on in there at the moment. You will also see your peers. I've seen so many people trying out protocols, pilot in their data collection processes. To name a few students, I've seen Evie in there with Voni. I've seen Rebecca working in there. I've seen Vicky working alongside Sanjoy. We've had Antonia and Jamila working alongside those. I know not necessarily on the fourth floor labs, but Josh and Ted have been cracking out some good work so far as well. I know Dakota has been down to see Helen, arranged a few sessions there. I've seen Anna in the lab with Sanjoy as well. So I'd just like to say it's fantastic that you guys are taking such a proactive role in prepping your projects. And it's really good to see. And all to say here is that if you are piloting your work now, or you've got plans to do that shortly within the next couple of weeks, you will be in a really good position to do an excellent research project, because you can start getting rid of some of those issues and problems from the outset and get into the swing of undertaking your research project as well. If you haven't and you want some advice and you're not quite sure where to start on your research project, then the recorded session that I did for Research Methods for Health Sciences 2 for Teddy the other week would be, if you haven't seen that video or that lecture, I would take the hour and 17 minutes to actually watch that, because it will really kind of help you put like a framework in place to try and make sure that you actually start your research project sooner rather than later. It just gives you a bit of a framework to work towards and some resources to help you get on track. And again, just as a final sort of thing, I haven't had a chance to do the document this week that I wanted to do with regards to laboratory space allocation. Most of you will know from conversations with your supervisor, but just to highlight that I will be putting together a document indicating which projects are going to be based in which laboratories. We've set up the laboratory spaces to ensure that everyone has access to the key pieces of equipment without compromising each other's projects. Once I get around to getting that document together, I will distribute it to you, and we can go from there. It will really help ensure that you guys have got the appropriate spaces and the appropriate equipment without conflicting across different projects moving forward. So me and Helen spent quite a lot of time making sure that that's going to happen. I just needed a bit of time this week to put that together. So bear with me. It will be with you as soon as possible, just to provide a little bit of clarity as to where you will be working moving forwards. I just want to point out as well, finally, I know I started with a positive, and I do think for the vast majority it's positive, but just a polite reminder that just remember it is your responsibility to move your project forward. So again, if you're waiting on your supervisor to do something, you don't want to be waiting. You want to be following up with them and saying, can I just follow up on this point? I'd like to meet with you to address this. I was hoping to get into the lab to do a pilot session. Would it be possible to arrange a session to be there so you can help me touch upon various different things? So do make sure that you are taking responsibility for your project moving forward so that you have a degree of success during your data collection process. And that's super important. And it's also super important for the qualification of a Master's of Science, because one of those is becoming independent. And this is a really good opportunity for you to work on those skills moving forwards. I'm just going to quickly jump back over to the chat because I've just noticed a question coming from Alex. Alex has asked here regarding the research project, if we have a issue, I'm going to assume, Alex, that you're still typing that out. So I will either hang on or come back to it depending on how quickly that comes through. Do let me know what you're going to ask, Alex, and I will come back to it in a second. I'm just going to kind of casually hang on here and just see what else we've got coming up, because I think from this point onwards, we're going to take the opportunity to, oh, here we go. Sorry, Alex. Okay. Regarding the research project, if we have an issue regarding recruitment, any suggestions? Looking to get posters up early next week. I can talk generally about participant recruitment if people feel that that is something that they want to touch on, and I'm happy to try and pass on some words of wisdom there. There's two different approaches that you can take to participant recruitment. One of those is because your inclusion criteria is so specific that it's not very ambiguous as to where you would go about finding those participants. So, for example, we were in the lab with Antonia and Jamila, who were working on the carbohydrate dose response study for running. The inclusion criteria for that is that you have to be an endurance trained male between 18 and 45 and have been running for 6 hours a week for the last 3 years. Now, you might think, wow, that's very specific, and that narrows the population down considerably. And it does. Like the total percentage of the population of which meet that criteria is very low, relatively speaking. But also, it's so specific that we know exactly where we would need to go to find those types of people. So again, there is a number of running clubs across the across the London area, where we can be very specific and targeted when we approach clubs to say, this is the type of people that we're looking for to undertake this particular research project. Please see attached the participant information sheet to find out more information about that. Or please, could you distribute this to your club membership so that people can contact us directly? So there's one piece of advice. If you have a project where your recruitment strategy is very specific populations, it makes it much easier and you can be super targeted in your approach. Now, one thing I would say to anyone in that position is that you don't necessarily want to be carpet bombing every single running club, every single cycling club, every single resistance training gym place in London at once, because what will happen is you will get a flood of those very specific people, of which you simply won't be able to handle the sheer volume of communication that you would have to deal with. So taking a slightly more staged approach and identifying maybe one or two clubs that are close by can really help with that. Now, the other side of this discussion is the fact, like, if you have extremely unrestricted inclusion criteria because you're interested in characterizing a particular group of people, and that group of people could just simply be any male, female who's aged between 18 and 40, who are not, they have no comorbidities, they're just healthy, active people. Now, the approach that you need to take from there is essentially looking at where you can get your recruitment poster and your participant information sheets in front of a group of people like that. Now, you are fortunate in the sense that there are 20,000 students available at the University of Westminster, and a large proportion of those will fit the inclusion criteria for the project. So then you need to think about strategies that you can get your poster in front of people. And again, not necessarily, unethical posters are ones that are coercive. So you don't want to be saying free bod pod, free £50 or whatever it is for taking part in that. But there will be inherent advantages to your project of which they need to be stated on your research poster anyway. So what you need to think about, well, what would entice someone to come in, or what would make someone think, actually, yes, I would like to take part in this research project because there is a benefit to society, to myself, to my knowledge of my own health, etc., if I take part. And again, you can be very specific on the recruitment poster as to some of the advantages of taking part. But again, if I see posters knocking about the university where it says, free this, free that, I I probably would sort of mention that, maybe you want to tone the language back a little bit on that. Um, so hopefully that's helped. I mean, Antonia's come in and asked a question here, which is actually quite useful. Alex, what's your inclusion requirement? Again, Alex, if you can be a bit more specific about who it is you're looking for, I can be a little bit more specific as to maybe options for how to get there. Again, if your poster goes up around the university within New Cavendish Street, staff do pick up on those posters as well. And again, they likely fill the inclusion criteria. Don't forget that we have 5 sites at Westminster. So we have Regent Street, we have 115 New Cavendish Street, we have Little Titchfield Street, we have Harrow, and we have the Wells Street campus. So there's 5 opportunities there and 5 distinct sets of staff, students that you can try and recruit your participants from. So a more comprehensive look at how you can get your poster in front of people can be quite helpful. Again, if you can be a bit more specific about, anyone who's thinking, actually, yeah, I don't know where I can get these people from, just mention who it is you're looking for in the chat, and I can pick that up and come back to you to help you out with that. So, Alex, you've come back here. First of all, Dakota, welcome to the stream. Great to have you on board. Alex said here, male to 18 to 35, active but not trained, no long-term metabolic medical conditions. So again, you're falling into that trap there, Alex, because you need to recruit these types of people, but there's so many people that would fit that criteria, it can be quite difficult to try and target a specific place. And Claire's come in here nicely. Thank you for contributing this, Claire. Marylebone would be good, Alex. I could send you your poster to one of the engineering construction staff if you like. Excellent. Thank you for that suggestion, Claire. I forgot about Marylebone. Yeah, of course. Huge campus there. And lots of folk, particularly, they have the architects school there. I don't know if it's a school or whatever department. But yeah, get yourself in front of there. You would likely, the more places you can get that in, the more places you can get your participant poster in front of people, and the more engaging you can make it, and how easy you can make it for people to get in touch with you, the better, really. Again, one technique that some students use is having the little tear-off strips with just your university email address on the bottom of it. You might want to use a QR code scanner, which takes them to a specific place, whether that's, because it generates an email on their phone so they can get in touch with you straight away. There's lots of different techniques that you can use. Just general advice to everyone. You shouldn't be using personal social media. You should only be using your university email address for contacting, no personal email addresses. And if you do need to put a phone number on there, you need to put your supervisor's office number on there. This was all advice that was given during the ethics committee meeting that I sat in. So just let me know. So just letting you know, sorry. Claire's come in there and filled in my gap of knowledge with regards to the School of Construction and Built Environment. And again, Alex just coming over and saying thanks and send it over ASAP. Antonia's come in now. Gosh, super active on the chat, which is fantastic. I was super worried at first, but I already have 7 out of the max of 12 participants. It took no time to get them. You'll be surprised how keen people are. I totally agree with that. I always think to myself that there is a certain type of person who wants to get involved with research projects. So again, the more opportunities you get to get your poster in front of people, the better. Again, you could take advantage of the fact that some staff have got a fairly good social media presence, so we can send them out. We can retweet posts on Twitter, for example. So if you make us aware of where it is, I'm happy to retweet stuff where practical, really. Vicky's come in. Can we use personal social media to recruit, but make sure comms are through uni email? it's a tricky one. I know the thing is that I'm in two minds. So the official line from the university is that you shouldn't be using personal social media. The reality of the matter is that there is no mechanism for us to, for the university more specifically, to police that. And as such, even if you did use personal social media, there's no way that we would A, know about that, or B, be able to qualify whether that's actually happening or not. So the official line is that you shouldn't be using personal social media to recruit. But the reality of the matter is that the likelihood is you wouldn't be policed anyway. So I can't say anything other than that. I know that's contradictory, but that's the official line. Excellent, great. I'm going to move the chat on because I'm just conscious. I'm more than happy for you guys to continue the conversation in the chat if you feel that you have any words of wisdom or any techniques that you want to share with your peers for recruiting participants. But I'm going to move it on to a little bit of a discussion with regards to the Q&A session on the Advanced Performance Nutrition Assessment. So, just for anyone who has sat with bated breath with regards to a question that they may have on the Q&A for the video observation, I'm just going to give you a general overview as to where I think you guys should be at whilst those questions come in. So you guys have had the opportunity to view now your partner's video, and hopefully at this point you've managed to watch the video from start to finish and you've started to put your log together. So the client log needs to be representative of the conversation that you've had. But I had Evie in the office yesterday, just she had a few questions with regards to some of the feedback she got on the formative submission. And one of the things we were discussing is the fact that you would put together a fairly comprehensive log. Now, you don't want that to be verbatim of what was discussed. It needs to be kind of summative in nature. And also, like, you may identify needs as a result of undertaking that log, which is part of the actual assessment that you want to do. There's no reason why you can't go back through the log and start eliminating things that you don't think are necessarily relevant to the needs of your participant. It just makes your log a little bit more concise, and it gives you the opportunity to remove any kind of superfluous discussions that took place which were not hugely relevant to the conversation or the end point, which was the identification of specific needs for that participant. So don't feel like you have to include every single word for word, first and foremost. And second of all, do feel free to do a second or third pass of your log to ensure that it's specific to what you're going to be discussing for the rest of the assessment. So that's just a point of advice there. I was hoping someone would chirp in with a few questions that they may have with regards to the assessment. So do feel free to ask if you have anything specific that you want to discuss. Now, some other things that I've been discussing with students over the last week or so is regards to, the identification of needs. So the key point I think to say on this with regards to the client consultation is the fact that the client will have desired outcomes, the things that they may want to achieve, but just bear in mind that what they want to achieve and what you believe their needs are likely two different things. Because if you think about you're sat there as the nutritionist the nutritionist who's going to critique the responses that you've got back from the questions that have been posed to the client. And ultimately, you can't just simply rely on the fact that the client knows what it is they want, because ultimately, if the client doesn't have the same level of understanding of nutrition that you do, they're not necessarily in the best position to know what is best for them. And that's where you come in. Like, they may well say, I want to achieve this and this and this. And then as the conversation progresses, it may become quite apparent that the things that they're doing may not allow that to happen, or that there's a knowledge gap between what it is that they want to achieve or what they think they want to achieve and the way that you would necessarily go about doing that. Again, discussion with a couple of students, there was some identification of the fact that it wasn't hugely clear what the person wanted. And again, it's at this point you would want to try and identify what those needs are based on the information provided. So I'm going to use an example that Evie was talking about with regards to her video observation or client observation. And the example that she talked about was the fact that the person didn't necessarily want to change or alter her body composition, her weight, and she was happy with that. But she was conscious of the fact that looking ahead towards the off season for her particular sport, that she was going to change the types of activity that she was undertaking to ensure that there wasn't a change. So again, the client need there is that she's going to go through a period of reduced training volume or reduced specific training volume, and it will then transition into a period of not necessarily changing her body composition through dietary interventions and through physical interventions. But as I identified to Evie, she's indicated that she doesn't want it to change, but that's not because of the intervention she wants to do, but she's also actively doing an activity to ensure that it doesn't change. So how can you support that process? And that would be the need for the client. And then that becomes about your understanding about, well, if she's going through a period of changing the type of activity she's doing, and she's going to then go on to, the discussion went on to more longer runs, she wasn't doing the sport specific training sessions anymore, it kind of moves you into this kind of idea of fuel for the work required, and then making potentially putting a framework around, well, how much energy is she expending? Could we have a look at energy balance and how that may transition from the period now into where she might be going in the future? So again, the client in that circumstance doesn't necessarily know what they want or what their needs are, but you can try and extrapolate some of the information out to try and identify what those needs are. And then you can start to work into, well, what intervention can you put in place and why is that scientifically justified moving forward? So now that I've had a chance to have a bit of a waffle there, I'm going to put the chat back open, and I've seen some questions come through. So I have the chat here on my phone, just it's a little bit easier for me to read because it's quite small on my screen. So we've got here, Maddie's indicated here. So Maddie asked me a few questions with regards to the assessment. She's followed up here. I've read your email regarding the critical review. However, I did spend 100 to 200 words of it critiquing, the consultation. So saying some things that could have been more helpful in the video. Then following around 500 words from what I got from the consultation, the needs of the client. Should I strike that first part and just add more about the client's needs? Okay. Again, the specific emphasis of this assessment is not critiquing the way, and again, the word of critiquing, what I'm going to change for this assignment next year is I'm going to change the word critique to analyze, because they are essentially synonymous. But the idea of critiquing means that I think you guys are getting it in your head that you have to say, well, what was bad about the assessment, and that's definitely not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to try and extract out the relevant information, and in doing so, that could, for your specific consultation, Maddie, that could be a case of there was some limited information that you could do with in order to make a clear assessment of what the client needs were. So again, I think you need to bring it always back around to the needs of the client to ensure that those words don't just stand alone, and it doesn't become about a kind of an analysis of the questions that were had, but an analysis of the questions that were asked in light of what you believe the needs would be. Because you have the benefit of being able to watch the whole consultation, identify what you believe the needs are, and then start to identify the fact that it would have been quite useful to ask a question around this point. You can kind of see it's maybe a match of the two things. Maybe not just going off on a specific tangent just about how the consultation was undertaken, but dragging that into, because it would have helped me inform need 1, need 2, need 3, whatever it would be. So hopefully that helps to provide a little bit of clarity there. Alex has come in and asked a question here. Would we get marked down regarding too much detail in the log? If you have a look at the marking rubric for the client log, it gives you specific terminology and phrases which will help you align your strategy, if you like, for producing the log. So I would say, Alex, that if your log is too wordy and is not specific enough, as in you're talking about things that are not relevant, then yes, I would probably it would signal to me that your log isn't concise and specific to the consultation, as in it's including information that's irrelevant. So again, you would want to consider that. But as I said to a few students this week, your log only represents 15% of the overall mark. You need to spend a proportionate amount of time on each of the sections. So if you feel like you're investing huge amounts of effort into writing the log, well, don't, because you've only got 15% of the marks, and it's specific about being concise. So do have a look at the marking rubric and take some advice from there. Just to move the conversation on a little bit there, Maddie is, okay, thanks for letting me know, Maddie. I can see here, And also, what do you mean when you mention to put the workplace in the cover page? Do you mean the University of Westminster or literally the workplace? Sorry if this is a stupid question. It seems like it's a stupid thing to put in the assessment guidelines, to be honest with you. I th the short answer right at this moment in time is I'm not sure, but let me head across to a browser window. Let me get it open and let me have a look at the context of what that is. If you have any questions while I'm doing that, do stick them in there and I will try and answer them at the same time. So just bear with me, folks, while I get this open. Okay, Alex, just while I'm doing that, an easy question to deal with here from Alex. Alex, if we use common abbreviations such as CHO in the log, do we have to expand on what it means? Again, you would just use the same convention that you would use if you were writing continuous prose, which would, on the first mentioning, you would write the word in full. Then you would, after the word, you would put it in brackets after the first mentioning. Then after that point, you are welcome to use the abbreviated version of the term from that point onwards. As I always say, if you're using a term that is not common, don't use it, because people will have to constantly refer back to it. Because if it's not a commonly used one, you don't. Again, the reader is not necessarily always going to remember that, and that becomes more important the more acronyms that you have, or abbreviations that you have, should I say? So yes, commonly known ones are fine. There was Evie mentioned one about glycemic index. Again, you can make the assumption that the person reading your assessment, because you're doing a critique, a scientific critique, and an intervention, and a scientific justification of that thing, that your audience is is scientifically minded, as in you can write it to the level of an MSc piece of work. You wouldn't necessarily have to go in to explain what glycemic index was. You can make the assumption that people will know what that is. I'm just heading across to the Blackboard site now. Apologies for not doing this in advance, but it tends to slow down my computer if I do this. Yeah, I'm just getting the assessment details up. While I do that, I've just seen another question. Is it safe to go? Nothing else relevant to the part-time year 2. Thanks. Vicky, all I would say is if you have any questions with regards to any of the modules that you are sitting, ask them now and I will address them before you leave. But other than that, I don't plan on covering any more content that I feel like you guys need to know immediately. And if there is anything that I do cover, I will put on as a Blackboard announcement. Okay, I've managed to get the guidance documents open now. So let me just change my view. So hopefully you guys can see my screen now. Oh, you won't be able to see this actually. Let me just pop this up here. Oh, you can. There we go. Perfect. Okay, cool. So I'm in the assessments folder down here, assessment details. Then I've gone to the summative section and we've got the guidance document here. I'm assuming, Maddie, this is where you found the workplace thing. So let me just have a look there. It may well be in the additional information, but I will double check, well, if that's the case or not. Oh, here we go. I see it. The title page must give the following information: the full name of the author's workplace, the full title of the video observation log. Uh, the author's workplace, I think, is just the University of Westminster in this context. I don't think you need your actual workplace. So yeah, I apologize. That is confusing, and I do apologize. Yeah, the author's workplace, as in where the work was produced, would be University of Westminster. Full stop. I hope that makes sense. And apologies for I think that's just a bit unnecessary, so I'll take that out for next year, I believe. Let me head back over to the chat. Okay, hopefully I haven't missed any questions here. I'm just having a quick look on the chat. There's nothing else that's come through. But I will definitely keep an eye. Again, if you're sat on a question that you're thinking I could really do with some help, here we go. I'm Maddie here. Also, the full title of the video observation log. Excuse me. Let me just have a look where it specifically states that. I think this is referring to just making sure that the video and the log are linked together. So I think it just needs to be clear where your video has come from and things like that. And I think that would be sufficient. The most important thing with regards to the cover sheet is that you don't put your name on it, because this is an anonymized piece of work. And it's not, and I've just seen your message there. It's no issue that this is they're little details. They're little details that they should be correct from my perspective. But yeah, so don't stress on that. The most important thing is you don't put your name on there, because it's an anonymized piece of work, that we know which video observation it refers to, so that I can then click on it when I'm reviewing your work, and that we know that it's what module it's for, etc., etc. But yeah, this is just I think this is an overkill amount of detail actually, so don't stress too much about it. Yes. Okay. I think while I'm waiting for any more questions to come in, what I'll do is I'll head back over to the guidance document and we can have a little look through there as we go by. Let me just make this full size so everyone can see it. Okay, let's have a look. Now, one of the questions that was posed to me by some students this week was that with regards to the idea that you have a number of interventions that need to be made, and the marking criteria and the rubric does make reference to how many pieces of advice that you give. So, as I said to one student this week, that if you give one nutritional need and it's lacking in detail and it doesn't seem to align with what the consultation was, then obviously the way that that would be interpreted is that you just haven't invested enough time into the assessment. So when I watched the video consultation, obviously I'll be making my own assessment of what I believe the needs were. And then if I only see the assessment has only got one need, when it's quite clear that it's not the case, then obviously that's not going to set you well in terms of moving you up the marking criteria. I did speak with one student and sort of said, well, if you came up with 10 needs, the reality of that is that the likelihood is the interventions that you're then putting in place would be impossible for the participant to actually undertake within the time period that you've given them. And again, it links into kind of positive behavior changes. You're unlikely to ensure that someone is going to change 10 behaviors or 10 specific things unless they are very, very small and very, very specific. It's unlikely that's going to happen. Again, there is a happy medium there, which will be specific to the consultation that you watch, but there is a happy medium there as to how much you can ask someone to change within a 3-month period. And again, if you do identify, as I said to this student, if you do identify that there are 10 different things that this person wants to achieve, the reality is that that's not realistic, but there will be a sub portion of those needs which would likely have the biggest impact on what you have identified the client's needs are. Again, you need to be, I think you need to have the ability to look at what the client wants and start to put them in a hierarchy of impact that that's going to have on your participant. If you are sat there thinking, yeah, well, at the moment, I'm on 1 or 2, but if they are very, very comprehensive interventions which require a big change, or even like a graduated change over a number of weeks or even a number of months, then that's appropriate. If you have 1 or 2 needs, but the intervention that you're going to use is actually very comprehensive and has lots of different parts to it, that's fine. Whereas if you have 10 needs and you've tried to identify the 3 or 4 that you're going to maintain, because those are the 3 or 4 that you believe are intense enough but will have the biggest impact on your participant, that's fine as well. But again, I can't be too prescriptive on this, because it's ultimately up to you what you believe the needs are and what you essentially plan to put together in the intervention. So again, do take that those kind of outcomes in mind when you put together your needs analysis and the intervention that you plan to use. And again, if anyone has any specific queries on that, please do ask them in the chat now, and I can try and address them and give a little bit more specific advice to those that have taken the time to watch the stream today. again, if we talked a bit about the log, I think if you did the formative assessment, I gave you some feedback on that as well. If you didn't undertake the formative assessment and you're struggling to think how much detail that would be, do look at the rubric more closely on that section to get a bit more insight as to how it is you would approach that. Again, the key element here, some things that I was touching on with the student, obviously, like, so there's a timestamp on the intervention, okay? That's key because you would want to try and predict, or not predict, but project forward and maybe make an assessment as to what you believe what the outcomes would be as a result of the intervention that you put in place. So 3 months is a decent amount of time for some changes to occur. And as such, are you then in a position to be able to say, well, what is the primary measure that you're going to use to assess whether your intervention has been successful or not? And I know some of you have struggled with, well, it's not going to be a performance outcome because it's going to be it's going to be difficult to measure that. You could have a weight-based outcome. It could be a body composition change. It could be the consumption of a specific food group to achieve a specific outcome. I'm not sure what those interventions that you plan to put together are, but ultimately you need to bring it back and say, how can I assess whether this has resulted in a behavior change, whether it's resulted in a physiological change I can measure, or whether it's changed the perception of the participant. And again, there are specific tools in place that you can use to try and address that. So whether that is a questionnaire about their perceptions of stress, and therefore you've put in together a physical activity like intervention or a nutritional strategy to work alongside that. Maybe that's a bad example because I'm stepping a little bit out which of my knowledge range there, but it could well be gastrointestinal discomfort during exercise, of which you've assessed them at the start based on their current practices, and then you have intermittent assessments moving through the 3-month intervention to determine like a feedback mechanism to ensure that you've made a change and then you've acted upon that change. But you've got a way of actually quantifying that and actually measuring whether your intervention has worked, rather than just on perception alone. Or leaving it to blind chance as well is never a good one to do. I'm going to head back over to the chat just because I've seen Alex ask another question here. So let me have a look. If we were suggesting a stage-by-stage plan for the client, would we have to support that with evidence? I hope that's clear. I think you just need a little bit more detail there, Alex, just to be a bit more specific about what you mean by a stage-by-stage plan. So the stage-by-stage plan will be in place to achieve an outcome, and the whatever you include within that plan, yes, you would like. So I'm going to use an arbitrary example of a stage-by-stage plan to increase someone's daily protein intake. The question I would then pose to you is, well, how much, from where are you starting and where do you want to get to? What's the evidence based on that? And what is the underpinning data that supports that? So it's one thing to put a reference in place to say, okay, well, the current, from what I can gather from a very rough needs-based analysis of the video consultation, it seems like they're under-consuming protein. I'd confirm that with maybe a food frequency questionnaire or a 3-day weighed food diary as suggested by X, Y, and Z in a year, which would allow me to do a more accurate assessment of their actual protein intake. The recommended daily intake for a resistance-trained male or female is between 1.6 and 1.8 grams per kilo, as stated by insert research paper here. This was also confirmed by various different research projects which compared habitual protein consumption on the aggregation of lean mass, or whatever your outcome is for the stage-by-stage plan. You could then introduce things like protein patterning, the source, the timing post-exercise, any co-ingestion. So using that 5 principles of protein consumption to help build a bigger picture of what that stage-by-stage intervention is. Because if you don't do that, it's essentially your opinion. And that's what we're trying to stay away from in this. It's your opinion based on the available literature which supports the intervention or the stage-by-stage plan that you want to utilize. And again, there was a discussion I had with a student this week about this, is that it's one thing to state the actual study that this research exists and this is where I found it from, but it could be another step forward to sort of say, if we were to specifically look at maybe the dose of protein in this arbitrary example that I'm using here, that there is evidence underpinning why you would use 20 grams, why you'd use 30 grams, or why you'd use 40 grams of a particular protein source post-exercise, during exercise, whatever it is that you want to target. And again, you would want to specifically delve into the data that that actually underpins that particular finding. For example, maximal myofibrillar protein synthesis was elevated on the consumption of 20 grams versus 40 grams. And then you could actually give the actual fractional synthetic rate, means and standard deviations, and the significance value, which would then really enrich the data and the underpinning research, which is actually saying why it is you would do those things. So again, that's the kind of level of detail I'm really looking for here, is that yes, you can state what the intervention is and that it's stage by stage, but ultimately you will have an outcome for that particular intervention, which is likely the participant's needs. And as such, you would need to support the actual science and the underpinning research which supports that particular intervention, to the extent of specifically explicitly stating that there was a change in that particular measure of this magnitude. Now, again, you wouldn't want to do that for every single thing that you cite, but the key points that you're making in your intervention, yes, I would want to see that you've delved into that paper and you understand fundamentally what the primary outcome change was and what it was in comparison to. Because this is another trap that students fall into, is that you'd say, oh, 20 grams an hour, 20 grams post-exercise is shown to increase maximal synthetic rate post-exercise, but in comparison to what? Nothing? 40 grams, 10 grams, like what's it in comparison to? And like that level of detail would then add to the justification of the particular intervention that you've put together. So hopefully, I know that was a bit waffly and a bit maybe intense, but hopefully it answers your question. I've just seen that you've come in with a little bit more detail here. For example, strength increases without gaining substantial body fat. I would suggest gradual nutrition changes. Yeah, you'd want to be way more specific than that. What nutrition changes? Would it be linked to calorie restriction? Would you ensure calorie balance? We know that if you feed an elevated amount of protein over a prolonged period of time, that helps with muscle mass retention, even if you're in a calorie deficit. So again, you can cite some of the research that underpins that as well. Would we have to use existing examples of people uses of this approach? Gradual changes increasing macronutrients over time and assessing body comp. Yeah, again, I think the example that I've given, the kind of arbitrary example I've given there with regards to protein consumption and maybe even just energy balance as a whole, yes, there is underpinning literature that would support. We know that we're in a constant flux of breakdown and synthesis. So how can you maximize synthesis and minimize breakdown in those particular examples? So that would really help really kind of put together a nice stage by stage intervention for you to build on. So hopefully that's clear. Are there any other questions with regards to the assessment? We started with 10, we're down to 5, so I think people are maybe getting a bit saturated. I don't know. Maybe they got other things to do. Maybe they got the actual assessment to do. I don't know. But if you are starting a question, please do ask it now, so I can address it moving forwards. It could be about anything, guys. Whatever it is that you want to touch on. I think whilst I'm just waiting for any more questions to come in, what I will do is just have a little bit you will have noticed there's no word count on this particular assessment, because I don't really see the point. But because you can convey this information in a concise way, and it's concision that being concise in your writing style is kind of what I'll be looking out for. So again, if you are laboring on a point, or that there's lots of unnecessary sections like detail or words, or you're not using conventional writing, scientific writing styles, obviously that's going to go against you. Again, you do need to consider and think about how you can convey your intervention and message using a concise writing style. That will keep your word count down anyway, and it will make you think more specifically and in a more targeted way as to how you address the particular assessment that you're trying to deal with here. I read it was 1,500 words in maximum guidelines. I'm not sure it does say that, but I will look. It does. Oh, my apologies. If that is the case, I'm wrong, and I will shut up now. I think maybe I was confusing it with the formative assessment. Yeah, no, you are right, Maddie. My apologies. I'm talking nonsense. I think I was no word limit for the formative. If it says 1,500 words in this, it's 1,500 words. I don't want to change that at this stage, and I'm getting it wrong now rather than what it says in the document. So my apologies for any confusion. Um, yeah, stay with what the guidance document says, please. My apologies. So yes, with that in mind, I apologize, by the way. I should know that. But with that in mind, you would have to be very concise in what you're saying anyway. So do bear that in mind. Is there any other points that anyone wants to pick up on before I potentially call it a day? Okay, well, with that in mind, I think I'm going to take the opportunity to call it a day. I'd just like to say, I hope that you have all enjoyed the SenStream platform. The university is keen on me on supporting its development moving forward, and that's why I'm not going to be doing weekly streams from this point onwards, because I'm going to use the time to help develop the stream to make it better, and hopefully help to distribute this kind of platform across the university from this point onwards. So, again, we will be doing one-offs every now and again throughout the summer, because I do see the benefit in it, and hopefully you guys do. And the reason I know you guys do is because you tune in every week. If I opened up, if I opened up the stats for the videos and saw that no one was watching them, I definitely wouldn't do it. Whereas I see, on average, we get about 1,000 minutes viewed per episode, which is amazing. And it shows that you guys, if you're not available to watch it during the session, that you do see value in it after the fact. I can also see when you guys drop out, and I do try and amend the approach that I give each week to ensure that we try and maintain the engagement level. So again, thank you for allowing me to kind of develop the platform as we've moved over the year. I love it. I think it's great. It kind of it makes me feel like that we're building something, that you guys have a platform to come to, that it's friendly, that you're welcome, that you can pose questions, gives you access to staff when you might sometimes feel that you don't have that access. And what I would say is, if you are watching this and you do want to sort of submit any sort of thoughts with regards to SendStream, just send me an email. I'm more than happy to hear why it's bad, why it's good. But any ideas that you have, any sort of suggestions moving forward, I'm more than happy to receive them. Moving ahead. So thank you very much for everyone, and thank you very much for getting involved, engaged, and moving on from there. I really do look forward to seeing you all in the labs moving ahead across the summer. It's going to be an exciting few weeks, few months for that matter. And I know all the staff are looking forward to working with you on those projects, because ultimately projects, research projects, and undertaking that sort of stuff is why we got in the job in the first place. So do get involved, ask lots of questions, challenge yourselves, make sure you're there to problem solve when you need to be. And then most importantly, enjoy the experience, because you will learn a lot as you go through it. So without me becoming too further gushing with regards to SenStream and the general involvement, thank you very much once again. Enjoy your projects and take it easy. And I will see you all in the coming weeks. Thanks very much. Ciao for now.